Let me ask you something. Have you checked your blood sugar lately? Maybe your doctor mentioned it was a little high. Maybe you saw a number on a lab report that didn't quite make sense. Or maybe nobody's said anything at all, and that's exactly what worries you. Here's what most people don't realize. High blood sugar doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't always come with dramatic symptoms. No alarm goes off. No warning light flashes. You can wake up every morning feeling completely fine, making your coffee, walking the dog, going about your day, while quietly, invisibly, something is happening inside your body that you cannot feel, and that's the part that catches so many people off guard because we're wired to trust how we feel. If we feel okay, we assume we are okay. That's just human nature. But with blood sugar, feeling fine and being fine are two very different things. And the gap between those two can quietly grow for years before anyone notices. This video is for you if your doctor has ever used the words prediabetes or borderline. It's for you if diabetes runs in your family and you've always wondered what's actually happening inside the body. It's for you if you're already managing blood sugar and want to understand it more deeply. And honestly, it's for anyone over 50 who wants to protect their health before small problems become serious ones. What we're going to talk about today isn't meant to frighten you, not even a little. But it is meant to open your eyes because the information most people never get is the information that actually changes things. Here's something that might surprise you right from the start: the damage from high blood sugar doesn't begin when you're diagnosed with diabetes. It begins earlier, much earlier, and it happens in places you'd never think to look: your eyes, your kidneys, your nerves, even your heart, long before any obvious symptoms ever show up. That's the quiet part. The part we need to talk about. So stay with me. Because by the time we're done, you're going to understand your body in a way that most people, even people who've been managing blood sugar for years, simply don't. And that understanding, that's where real protection begins. Let's start at the very beginning, because before we can talk about what high blood sugar does to your body, we need to understand what blood sugar actually is and why your body needs it in the first place. Every single time you eat something, whether it's a bowl of oatmeal in the morning, a sandwich at lunch, or even just a handful of crackers in the evening, your body gets to work breaking that food down. And a big part of what it's breaking it down into is glucose. Simple sugar. The kind your cells use as fuel. Think of glucose the way you'd think of gasoline. Your body needs it to run. Your brain needs it to think. Your muscles need it to move. Without glucose, nothing works the way it should. So glucose isn't the enemy. Let's be clear about that right from the start. The problem isn't glucose itself. The problem is what happens when there's too much of it, and it has nowhere to go. Here's how it's supposed to work. You eat a meal. Your blood sugar rises. That's completely normal. Your pancreas, a small organ sitting just behind your stomach, senses that rise and releases a hormone called insulin. Insulin acts like a key. It unlocks the doors of your cells so glucose can move out of your bloodstream and into the places that need it. Blood sugar rises, insulin responds, glucose gets delivered. Blood sugar comes back down. That's the system working perfectly. But here's where things start to go wrong for millions of Americans, and this is the part most people have never had explained to them clearly. Over time, especially as we get older, our cells can start to become resistant to insulin. They stop responding to it the way they should. Imagine trying to unlock a door with a key that used to work perfectly, but now the lock is stiff. You're turning the key, but the door isn't opening the way it used to. Your pancreas senses this. It thinks we need more insulin, so it works harder. It produces more. For a while, that extra effort is enough to keep things balanced. Blood sugar stays in a normal range. Lab results look fine. Your doctor doesn't raise any red flags, and you feel completely normal. This is the stage that slips past so many people, because everything seems okay. But underneath the surface, your pancreas is quietly straining, working overtime just to keep up. And your blood sugar, even if it looks acceptable on paper, may be spiking higher than it should after meals and staying elevated longer than your body was designed to handle. That pattern, repeated day after day, meal after meal, is where the damage quietly begins. Now, here's something that genuinely surprises most people when they hear it. For the first time, you don't have to have diabetes for high blood sugar to be affecting your body. Prediabetes, a stage where blood sugar is elevated but not yet in the diabetic range, affects over 100 million American adults. 100 million. And the Centers for Disease Control estimates that more than 80% of people who have it don't even know. 80%. That means most people walking around with prediabetes today are doing exactly what you might be doing right now, living their lives feeling reasonably well, with no idea that their blood sugar is already beginning to wear on their blood vessels, their nerves, and their organs. And here's what makes this so important to understand. The damage isn't dramatic at first. It doesn't show up suddenly like a broken bone or a bad infection. It's gradual, quiet, cumulative, like water slowly wearing away at stone. Every day of elevated blood sugar adds just a little more wear on your arteries, on the delicate filters in your kidneys, on the tiny blood vessels in the back of your eyes, on the long nerves running all the way down to your feet. You don't feel it happening. That's the hardest part. Think about a garden hose that's been left out in the sun for too many summers. On the outside, it might still look fine, but on the inside, the material has been slowly breaking down, getting brittle, developing small cracks. One day you turn on the water and suddenly it fails, and everyone acts surprised. But the damage didn't happen that day. It happened slowly, over years. While nobody was paying attention, that's what high blood sugar does inside the human body. Now, let's talk about where this damage actually shows up first, because this is where most people are genuinely caught off guard. And understanding this changes everything about how you think about blood sugar management. Most people assume that blood sugar becomes dangerous only when it reaches full diabetes levels. That's one of the most common misconceptions out there, and it's one that, unfortunately, gives a lot of people a false sense of security. The research tells a very different story. Studies have shown that blood vessel damage begins at blood sugar levels lower than the official diabetes threshold, lower, which means the body is already under stress at a stage most doctors would simply call watch and wait. Watching and waiting has its place, but understanding what's happening during that time, that's not something most patients ever get explained to them sitting in a doctor's office. And that understanding, that's exactly what we're building right now. Your blood vessels are the key to all of this, because they are everywhere. Every organ in your body depends on a network of blood vessels to deliver oxygen and nutrients and carry waste away. And high blood sugar is uniquely damaging to those vessels, particularly the smallest ones, the ones called capillaries. When glucose stays elevated in your bloodstream longer than it should, it begins to act almost like a slow-moving irritant on the inner walls of those vessels. Over time, those walls thicken, they stiffen, they lose their flexibility. Blood flow becomes less efficient, and the organs those vessels supply begin to receive just a little less of what they need, a little less oxygen to the kidneys, a little less circulation to the nerves in your legs and feet, a little less blood flow to the tiny vessels behind your eyes, a little more strain on the heart, none of it dramatic all at once. All of it adding up quietly over time. And here's the detail that truly matters, the one that should shift the way you think about this entire topic. By the time most people get a diabetes diagnosis, studies suggest they've already had elevated blood sugar for somewhere between 7 and 10 years. 7 to 10 years of quiet, invisible, cumulative damage before anyone officially gave it a name. That's not meant to alarm you. It's meant to empower you, because understanding that timeline means understanding that earlier awareness, the kind you're building right now, genuinely matters. The earlier you understand what's happening, the more you can do about it. And the more you do about it, the better your body responds. The good news is real. And we're going to get to it, but first, there's something else happening in the body alongside all of this. Something that most blood sugar conversations completely overlook. And once you hear it, you'll understand why blood sugar affects so much more than just your pancreas or your diet. It has to do with inflammation. And it changes the entire picture. Let's talk about inflammation, because if blood sugar is the spark, inflammation is the fire that spreads from it. And understanding this connection is one of the most important things you can do for your health, especially after 50. You've probably heard the word inflammation before. Maybe your doctor mentioned it. Maybe you've seen it on a health segment on the evening news. But most people think of inflammation the way they think of a swollen ankle or a sore throat. Something visible, something you can feel, something that goes away. That's one kind of inflammation. And it's actually healthy. When you sprain your ankle and it swells up, that's your immune system doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It rushes resources to the injured area. It signals the body to begin repairs. That kind of inflammation is short-term, purposeful, and protective, but there's another kind of inflammation entirely. And this one is different in every way. It's called chronic low-grade inflammation, and you cannot feel it. There's no swelling you can see, no pain that tells you something is wrong. It burns slowly and silently deep inside the body, and high blood sugar is one of its most reliable triggers. Here's what happens when glucose stays elevated in your bloodstream. Your immune system interprets it as a form of stress. It goes on alert. It begins releasing inflammatory chemicals called cytokines into the bloodstream. Small amounts, nothing dramatic, but constant. Day after day, week after week, and chronic inflammation, even at low levels, creates a kind of internal environment where damage accumulates faster. Healing slows down, and disease finds it much easier to take hold. This is why people with persistently high blood sugar tend to experience so many different health problems that on the surface seem completely unrelated to blood sugar. Joint pain that won't settle, fatigue that sleep doesn't fix, brain fog that creeps in slowly, skin that heals more slowly than it used to. A feeling of just not being quite right that's hard to put into words. Many people chalk these things up to getting older. And sometimes that's true. But sometimes, more often than most people realize, what they're actually experiencing is the quiet downstream effect of blood sugar and inflammation working together. Inside the body, let's talk about the heart for a moment. Because this is where the stakes become very real. Heart disease is the #1 cause of death in the United States, and high blood sugar dramatically increases the risk of developing it, not just in people with full diabetes, but in people with prediabetes too. Here's why: those inflammatory chemicals we just talked about don't float harmlessly through the bloodstream. They interact with the walls of your arteries. Over time, they contribute to the buildup of plaque, the fatty, hardened deposits that narrow arteries and restrict blood flow. High blood sugar also makes the blood itself slightly thicker and stickier than it should be, which makes clots more likely to form. Put those things together and you begin to understand why cardiovascular risk climbs alongside blood sugar, quietly, gradually, long before a diagnosis is ever made. Now here's something that catches a lot of people off guard. Many adults who have their first heart attack have blood sugar levels that were elevated, but not yet in the diabetic range for years beforehand. Not diabetic, just elevated, just that quiet, under-the-radar kind of high that so many people are told to simply watch. That doesn't mean a heart attack is inevitable, not even close. But it does mean that blood sugar deserves to be taken seriously earlier than most of us are taught to take it seriously. Let's shift to the kidneys. Your kidneys are remarkable organs. Most people don't think about them much. They sit quietly in your lower back, filtering your blood around the clock, pulling out waste products and excess fluid and sending them out of the body through urine. Every single day, your kidneys filter roughly 50 gallons of blood. 50 gallons, and they do it through an intricate system of tiny blood vessels, exactly the kind that high blood sugar damages most. Early kidney stress from elevated blood sugar almost never produces symptoms. Your kidneys have so much reserve capacity that they can lose a significant portion of their filtering ability before you notice anything at all. No pain, no obvious changes. Just a quiet, gradual loss of function happening in the background. This is why kidney disease is sometimes called a silent condition. And it's why regular monitoring matters so much, because by the time symptoms appear, the damage is often already advanced. The good news is that catching elevated blood sugar early and managing it well is one of the most effective things a person can do to protect their kidneys long term. The kidneys respond well to better blood sugar control. The damage isn't always permanent, especially when it's caught before it progresses. Now let's talk about something that affects millions of older Americans and rarely gets connected to blood sugar in everyday conversation: nerve damage. The medical term is neuropathy, and it's one of the most common and most underappreciated complications of prolonged high blood sugar. Your nervous system is essentially a vast communication network. Billions of nerve fibers running from your brain and spinal cord out to every corner of your body, your fingertips, your toes, your digestive system, your bladder, even your heart rate. These nerves carry signals back and forth constantly, telling your body what to feel, how to move, when to digest, when to regulate, and they depend on tiny blood vessels to stay healthy. When those vessels are damaged by high blood sugar over time, the nerves they supply begin to suffer. The signals they carry become less reliable, and the symptoms that result can range from mildly annoying to genuinely life-altering. The most common form starts in the feet: tingling, numbness, a burning sensation, especially at night. The feeling that your feet are asleep even when you've been up and moving. Some people describe it as walking on sand. Others say it feels like wearing socks when they're not wearing any at all. And here's what makes this particularly important for older adults: when you lose sensation in your feet, you lose one of your most important warning systems. A small cut, a blister, a sore that develops on the bottom of the foot, you may not feel it. And wounds that go unnoticed tend to go untreated. In people with poor circulation and compromised healing, both of which are connected to high blood sugar, small foot wounds can become serious very quickly. This is not meant to frighten you, but it is meant to help you understand why foot care becomes so important when blood sugar is a concern. Something as simple as checking your feet every evening, which takes less than a minute, can genuinely make a meaningful difference. Now, there's one more connection that most blood sugar conversations leave out entirely, and this one affects something that many older adults worry about deeply but rarely connect to blood sugar at all. Memory. There is a growing body of research, and this is an area scientists are actively studying right now, suggesting that the brain is more vulnerable to blood sugar irregularities than we ever previously understood. The brain is an extraordinarily energy-hungry organ. It runs almost entirely on glucose, and it has its own version of insulin, signaling its own system for managing how glucose is used at the cellular level. When that system is disrupted, when insulin resistance affects not just the muscles and liver but also the brain, something starts to change in how brain cells communicate, how they repair themselves, and how efficiently they process and store information. Researchers have begun referring to Alzheimer's disease, in some contexts, as a condition with metabolic roots. Some scientists have even used the phrase type 3 diabetes in research discussions, not as an official diagnosis, but as a way of pointing to the connection between insulin resistance in the brain and cognitive decline. That language is still being debated. The science is still developing, but the signal in the research is strong enough that it would be wrong not to mention it, because if you've ever sat in a room and forgotten why you walked in, If you've ever lost a word mid-sentence that you've known for 50 years. If you've ever noticed that your thinking feels just a little slower than it used to, and written it off as just getting older, it's worth knowing that blood sugar health and brain health are far more connected than most people ever realize, and that connection works in both directions. Better blood sugar control supports better brain circulation. It reduces inflammation in the brain. It supports the cellular repair systems that keep memory and cognition sharper over time. These aren't small things. These are the kinds of things that shape the quality of your daily life for years and decades to come. So by now you have a clearer picture of what's happening inside the body when blood sugar stays elevated. The heart, the kidneys, the nerves, the brain, all connected, all quietly affected. And the natural question that follows all of this is, what can actually be done about it? Because the answer isn't as complicated or as overwhelming as you might expect. In fact, some of the most effective steps are the ones that fit most naturally into an ordinary day, the kind of day most of us are already living. Here's where everything starts to feel more hopeful, because everything we've talked about so far, the blood vessels, the inflammation, the nerves, the brain, all of it responds to the same thing. The choices you make every single day. Not dramatic choices, not expensive ones, not the kind that require a complete overhaul of your entire life overnight. Small, consistent, realistic choices, and the research behind them is genuinely encouraging. Let's start with food, because that's where most people's minds go first when blood sugar comes up. And while diet absolutely matters, the conversation around food and blood sugar is far more nuanced than most people realize and far less restrictive than most people fear. The first thing worth understanding is this: it's not just what you eat, it's how you eat it. Here's what that means in practical terms. When you sit down to a meal, the order in which you eat the foods on your plate actually influences how quickly glucose enters your bloodstream. This is something most people have never been told, and it's one of the simplest, most immediately useful things you can start doing today. Research has shown that eating vegetables first, then protein and healthy fats, and saving starchy or carbohydrate-rich foods for last can meaningfully reduce the blood sugar spike that follows a meal. The fiber in vegetables slows digestion. The protein and fat slow the absorption of glucose. By the time the carbohydrates arrive in your digestive system, your body is in a much better position to handle them. Same foods, same meal, just a different order. Think about that the next time you sit down to dinner. Before you reach for the bread or the rice or the mashed potatoes, take a few bites of your salad first. Eat some of your chicken or fish. Then enjoy the rest of your plate. It takes no extra time. It costs nothing. And it genuinely makes a difference. Now let's talk about carbohydrates more specifically, because this is where so much confusion lives. Carbohydrates are not the enemy. Your body needs them. Your brain runs on them. The goal is not to eliminate them, it's to choose them more wisely and pair them more strategically. There's a big difference between the way a bowl of white rice affects your blood sugar and the way a bowl of lentils does. Both contain carbohydrates, but lentils are loaded with fiber and protein, which dramatically slow how quickly that glucose enters your bloodstream. White rice, on the other hand, digests quickly and sends blood sugar rising fast. The same comparison applies across dozens of everyday foods: white bread versus whole grain bread with visible seeds, regular pasta versus pasta cooked al dente, slightly firm, which actually digests more slowly. A glass of orange juice versus eating an actual orange, where the fiber slows sugar absorption considerably. Instant oatmeal loaded with added sugar versus plain rolled oats cooked slowly and topped with a spoonful of almond butter. None of these swaps require giving up foods you love. They just require a small shift in how you choose and prepare them. And here's something that surprises almost everyone: eating fat with your carbohydrates actually helps stabilize blood sugar. For decades, we were told to fear fat. Low-fat everything was supposed to make us healthier. But what often happened instead was that fat was replaced with sugar and refined carbohydrates, and blood sugar levels across the country climbed steadily. A small handful of nuts with your crackers, half an avocado alongside your toast, a drizzle of olive oil over your vegetables. These additions don't just make food more satisfying, they slow digestion, blunt glucose spikes, and support the kind of steady, even blood sugar that your body genuinely thrives on. Now, let's talk about something that has nothing to do with food, and yet may be just as powerful for blood sugar as anything you put on your plate. Movement. Not exercise in the way most people picture it. Not a gym membership or a structured workout program, though those things are wonderful if they work for you. Just movement. Regular, gentle, consistent movement woven into your ordinary day. Here's the science behind why it matters so much. Part to your muscles are one of the primary places your body stores and uses glucose. When your muscles are active, even during light activity, they pull glucose out of your bloodstream and use it for energy. They do this partially without needing insulin, which means that movement directly lowers blood sugar through a completely separate pathway from everything your pancreas is doing. This is why a short walk after a meal is one of the most effective blood sugar tools available to any human being. Not a long walk, not an intense one, just 10 to 15 minutes of easy, comfortable walking after eating. Studies have shown that a 10-minute walk taken within 30 minutes of finishing a meal can reduce the post-meal blood sugar spike by a remarkable amount, more than many people would expect. And that effect compounds over time, meal after meal, day after day. If you have a neighborhood you enjoy walking through, this fits naturally. If the weather isn't cooperating, walking in place in your living room while the evening news plays does the same job. If you have a dog, your after-dinner walk just became your most powerful health habit. The point isn't intensity. The point is consistency, and speaking of consistency, let's talk about something that most blood sugar conversations skip over almost entirely. Sleep. This one catches people off guard. But the connection between sleep and blood sugar is so strong, so well documented, and so immediately practical that it deserves far more attention than it gets. When you don't sleep well, whether that means not sleeping long enough, waking frequently through the night, or simply not reaching the deep restorative stages of sleep, your body's insulin sensitivity drops the very next day. 1 night of poor sleep can measurably affect how your cells respond to insulin the following morning. Your hunger hormones shift, you crave more sugar and more starchy food. Your stress hormones rise. Your ability to regulate blood sugar becomes less efficient, and for many older adults, this becomes a cycle that feeds itself. Poor sleep raises blood sugar. Elevated blood sugar disrupts sleep. Disrupted sleep raises blood sugar further. Breaking that cycle can begin with some surprisingly simple habits. Keeping your bedroom cool and dark sends a clear signal to your nervous system that it's time to rest. Going to bed and waking at consistent times, even on weekends, helps your body's internal clock regulate itself more reliably. Avoiding screens in the hour before bed reduces the kind of mental stimulation that keeps the brain alert when it should be winding down. And here's one that many people don't expect: eating your last meal of the day earlier. Giving your body 2 to 3 hours between dinner and bedtime supports better sleep quality and also gives your blood sugar time to settle before you lie down. When you eat late and go to bed soon after, your body is managing digestion and blood sugar at a time when it's supposed to be resting and repairing. Small shift, meaningful impact. Now let's talk about stress, because this is another piece of the blood sugar puzzle that rarely gets the attention it deserves. In everyday health conversations, when you're under stress, whether it's the kind that comes from a difficult situation in your life or simply the low-level background stress that many of us carry without even noticing, your body releases hormones, cortisol, adrenaline. These are your fight or flight chemicals. And one of the things they do is prompt your liver to release stored glucose into the bloodstream. Your body is trying to give you quick energy to deal with a perceived threat. That made perfect sense when the threat was a predator thousands of years ago. But when the threat is a frustrating phone call with an insurance company or worrying about a family member, your body still responds the same way. Blood sugar rises. Not because you ate anything, just because you were stressed. And for people who are already managing elevated blood sugar, this stress response can create spikes that seem to come out of nowhere. You ate the same things you always eat. You followed all your usual habits, but your numbers were higher, and you couldn't figure out why. Stress may be the answer nobody told you to look for. This doesn't mean you need to eliminate stress. That's not realistic, and frankly, it's not necessary. But finding even one reliable way to bring your nervous system down from that heightened state regularly can make a measurable difference in your blood sugar over time. For some people, it's 10 minutes of quiet prayer or meditation in the morning. For others, it's sitting on the back porch with a cup of herbal tea and simply watching the yard. For others, it's a phone call with someone they love, or tending a small garden, or putting on music that brings them back to a happier time. The specific activity matters far less than the consistency of it. Your nervous system needs a daily signal that says you're safe. You can rest now. And when it receives that signal regularly, the effects ripple out in ways that touch your blood sugar, your sleep, your inflammation levels, and your overall sense of well-being. There's one more practical area worth discussing before we reach the final piece of this conversation, and it's something simple enough that it often gets dismissed, even though the evidence behind it is remarkably strong. Water. Staying consistently well hydrated throughout the day supports healthy blood sugar in ways most people have never considered. When you're dehydrated, your blood becomes more concentrated. The glucose dissolved in it becomes proportionally more concentrated as well, which means blood sugar readings can run higher simply because there isn't enough fluid in your system to dilute them properly. Your kidneys also work less efficiently when you're dehydrated, which affects how well your body clears excess glucose. Many older adults are chronically mildly dehydrated without realizing it. The sensation of thirst actually becomes less reliable as we age. Your body doesn't send the same clear signal it did when you were younger. So you can be running low on fluids and not feel particularly thirsty. A simple habit worth considering: start each morning with a full glass of water before your coffee. Keep a glass somewhere visible during the day as a reminder. Herbal teas count. Water-rich foods like cucumbers, celery, and berries contribute as well. None of this requires a dramatic lifestyle overhaul. That's the thing that's worth saying out loud clearly. Everything we've covered in this section, the food order, the smarter carbohydrate choices, the 10-minute walk after meals, the earlier bedtime, the consistent sleep schedule, the daily moment of calm, the glass of water in the morning, none of it is complicated. None of it is expensive. None of it requires a prescription or a specialist. These are the kinds of changes that fit into a real life, into your life, the life you're already living, and when they're practiced consistently, not perfectly, just consistently, the cumulative effect on blood sugar, on inflammation, on energy, on sleep, and on long-term health is far greater than most people ever expect. But there's one final piece to this conversation, the piece that ties everything together, the insight that most people leave a doctor's appointment without ever hearing, and that may be the most empowering thing we've discussed yet. We've covered a lot of ground together. And if you've stayed with me this far, that tells me something about you. It tells me you take your health seriously, that you're not willing to simply wait and see, that you'd rather understand what's happening in your own body than leave that understanding entirely to someone else. That matters more than you might think, because here's the truth that doesn't get said enough in health conversations. Knowledge is not a passive thing. The moment you truly understand what's happening inside your body, not in vague, frightening terms, but clearly, specifically, practically, something shifts. you start making different decisions. Not out of fear, out of genuine understanding. And decisions made from understanding tend to stick in a way that decisions made from fear never quite do. So, let's bring everything together. Let's talk about what all of this actually means for your daily life going forward. The single most important idea to carry with you from everything we've discussed today is this: blood sugar is not a problem that belongs only to people with a diabetes diagnosis. It is a spectrum, a continuum, and where you sit on that continuum matters, not just when you cross some official threshold, but every single day at every meal, in every small choice that either supports your body's ability to regulate glucose or quietly works against it, that reframes the entire conversation. It means that blood sugar health isn't something you manage after a diagnosis. It's something you support throughout your life. And the earlier you start supporting it, the more your body has to work with. Now let's talk about monitoring, because this is an area where many people feel confused or uncertain, and it deserves a clear, practical answer. If your doctor has recommended checking your blood sugar at home, take that recommendation seriously. A simple glucose meter, available at virtually any pharmacy across the country, gives you real-time information that no lab test taken once every few months can fully replace. A lab result tells you a snapshot. A home meter tells you a story. It shows you how your body responds to specific meals, to a night of poor sleep, to a stressful afternoon, to that walk you took after dinner. That information is genuinely powerful. Not because it gives you something to worry about, but because it gives you something to act on. If you've never used a home glucose meter and you're curious about whether it might be right for you, that's a conversation worth having with your doctor at your next appointment. Ask specifically about checking your blood sugar after meals, not just fasting in the morning. Post-meal readings tell a much richer story about how your body is actually handling glucose throughout the day. And speaking of doctor appointments, let's talk about a specific lab test that every adult over 50 should know about. It's called the HbA1c, sometimes written as A1c. Unlike a standard blood sugar test that measures your glucose at a single moment in time, the A1c gives a picture of your average blood sugar over the past 2 to 3 months. It reflects the cumulative pattern, not just how you were doing the morning of your lab draw, but how your blood sugar has been running day in and day out across an entire season of your life. A normal A1c is generally considered to be below 5.7%. The Prediabetes range runs from 5.7 to 6.4%, and a result of 6.5% or higher onto separate tests typically indicates diabetes. If you don't know your A1c number, ask for it at your next appointment. It is a routine blood test. It requires no special preparation beyond what your doctor recommends, and the number it gives you is one of the most meaningful single pieces of information available about your long-term metabolic health. Write it down. Track it over time. Know your number the way you know your blood pressure or your cholesterol, because it deserves exactly that level of attention. Now here's something that often surprises people, and it's one of the most genuinely hopeful things in all of the research. Around blood sugar, the body is remarkably responsive even after years of elevated blood sugar, even after a prediabetes diagnosis. Even in people who are well into their 60s, 70s, and beyond, the body retains a meaningful capacity to respond to better habits. Blood sugar levels can improve. A1c numbers can come down. Insulin sensitivity can be restored, at least partially, through consistent lifestyle changes. This is not wishful thinking. It is documented in study after study. The Diabetes Prevention Program, one of the largest and most rigorous lifestyle intervention studies ever conducted, found that people with prediabetes who made moderate lifestyle changes reduced their risk of progressing to type 2 diabetes by 58%. 58%? That's more than most medications achieved in the same study, and the lifestyle changes involved were not extreme. They centered on modest improvements in eating habits, regular gentle movement, specifically a goal of 150 minutes of walking per week, which works out to about 20 minutes a day, and gradual, sustainable weight loss for those who were carrying excess weight. 20 minutes of walking a day, that's it. That was enough to cut the risk of diabetes by more than half in people who were already heading in that direction. If that doesn't feel hopeful, I don't know what does. But here's the nuance that matters. And this is something the research makes very clear. Consistency beats intensity every single time. A perfect week of healthy eating followed by 2 weeks of old habits produces far less benefit than a year of steady, imperfect but continuous effort. Your body doesn't reward perfection. It rewards persistence. It rewards showing up again and again, not flawlessly, but faithfully. You will have days where you eat something that sends your blood sugar higher than you intended. You will have nights where sleep doesn't come easily. You will have stressful weeks where the calm you're trying to build feels completely out of reach. That's life. That's all of our lives. The goal isn't a perfect record. The goal is a general direction, a consistent leaning toward choices that support your body rather than strain it. And over weeks and months and years, that direction compounds into something genuinely significant. Think of it the way you'd think of interest in a savings account. Small deposits made consistently over time grow into something far larger than any single large deposit made once and then forgotten. Your health works the same way. Every 10-minute walk matters. Every meal where you eat your vegetables first matters. Every night where you're in bed at a reasonable hour matters. Every glass of water you drink in the morning matters. Every quiet moment that brings your nervous system down from stress matters. None of them are dramatic. All of them are real. Now, let's talk about something that ties directly into how you feel day to day. Because better blood sugar isn't just about avoiding future complications. It's about how you feel right now. Many people who make these kinds of consistent changes report something they didn't fully expect. More energy. Not the kind of energy that comes from caffeine or sugar, that quick rise and inevitable crash. Steady energy. The kind that's there when you wake up in the morning and still with you in the late afternoon. The kind that makes a walk feel enjoyable rather than exhausting. The kind that makes it easier to be present with the people you love. Better sleep. Clearer thinking. Moods that feel more stable and less at the mercy of whatever the day brings. Joints that feel less inflamed. Digestion that runs more smoothly. These benefits don't usually announce themselves dramatically. They arrive quietly, gradually. You realize one day that you haven't felt the 3 o'clock energy slump in a while. That you woke up this morning and actually felt rested. That you walked further than you expected to and didn't feel the need to sit down halfway through. That's the compound effect of better blood sugar at work. Not in your lab results alone, but in the texture of your everyday life, and that's worth something that no number on a test can fully capture. Let's talk, finally, about the people in your life, because this isn't just about you. If you have children or grandchildren who are watching the habits you model every day, the choices you make around food, around movement, around rest, around how you handle stress, those observations are shaping them in ways neither of you may fully realize. The research on intergenerational health habits is clear. Children and grandchildren who grow up watching adults prioritize their health, who see that it's something worth paying attention to, something worth protecting, carry those lessons forward in their own lives. You taking care of yourself is an act of care for the people who love you, and the reverse is true too. If you're managing blood sugar concerns and you have a spouse or a close friend or a sibling dealing with the same challenges, doing this together is genuinely more effective than doing it alone. Accountability, shared meals, walking together, these things make consistency easier and the journey far less lonely. So here's what I'd like to leave you with: not a long list of rules, not a rigid protocol, just a few honest, practical reminders to carry forward from today. Know your numbers. Ask your doctor about your A1C if you don't already know it. Understand where you stand, not to frighten yourself, but to give yourself accurate information to work with. Eat with awareness, not obsession. not restriction, just awareness. Notice how different foods make you feel. Try eating your vegetables and protein before your starches. Add a healthy fat where you can.
Let's discuss
Give your
your health
body a
and answer
chance
any
to handle
questions.
glucose
My goal
more
is to provide
smoothly
clear,
by making
reliable
small,
guidance so you can make
thoughtful
informed
choices
decisions.
at
Hello,
each
I'm
meal.
glad you're here
Move
today.
after you
Let's
eat.
discuss your health
Even
and
10
answer
minutes.
any questions.
Even
My
just
goal
a
is to
gentle
provide
walk
clear,
around the
reliable
block or
guidance so
through
you
the
can make
house.
informed decisions.
Make it a
Hello,
habit
I'm glad you're
attached
here
to
today.
something you
Let's
already
discuss your
do,
health and answer any
finishing dinner,
questions.
watching
My
the
goal is to
evening
provide
news,
clear,
so it
reliable
becomes
guidance so
automatic
you can make
rather than
informed decisions.
effortful.
Hello, I'm
Protect
glad
your
you're here
sleep.
today. Let's
Treat it as
discuss your health and
seriously
answer
as
any
you treat
questions.
your
My
diet
goal
or
is to
your
provide clear,
medications.
reliable
Your body
guidance
does
so you
its
can make
most
informed
important
decisions. Hello,
repair
I'm glad
work
you're here
while
today.
you sleep.
Let's discuss your
Blood
health
sugar
and answer any
regulation,
questions.
immune
My goal is to
function,
provide
brain
clear,
health,
reliable
emotional
guidance so you can make
resilience.
informed
All of
decisions.
it depends
Hello,
on
I'm glad you're here
consistent,
today.
quality
Let's discuss
rest.
your health
Find
and answer
your
any
calm.
questions.
Whatever
My
that
goal is
looks
to
like for
provide
you.
clear,
Build
reliable
it into
guidance
your
so you
day
can make
not
informed
as a
decisions.
luxury,
Hello, I'm
but
glad you're
as a
here today.
necessity.
Let's discuss
Your
your
nervous
health and answer
system
any
needs
questions.
it.
My
Your
goal
blood
is to
sugar
provide
responds
clear,
to
reliable
it.
guidance
Your
so you
whole
can make
body
informed
benefits
decisions.
from
Hello,
it.
I'm glad
And
you're here
drink your
today.
water.
Let's discuss your
Simple,
health and answer any
unglamorous,
questions. My
genuinely
goal is to
effective.
provide
Most
clear,
of all,
reliable
be
guidance so you
patient
can
with
make informed
yourself.
decisions. Hello,
Real
I'm glad you're
change
here
in the
today.
body
Let's
doesn't
discuss
happen
your
in a
health
week.
and answer any
It
questions.
happens in the
My
quiet
goal is to provide
accumulation
clear,
of good
reliable
days.
guidance so
In
you
the
can make
decision
informed
to
decisions.
try
Hello,
again
I'm glad
after
you're
a
here
difficult
today.
one.
Let's
In the
discuss your
willingness
health and
to
answer
keep
any
showing up
questions.
for your
My
own
goal is to
health
provide
even
clear,
when progress
reliable
feels
guidance so
slow
you can make
or
informed
invisible.
decisions. Hello,
It is
I'm
never
glad you're here
invisible
today.
to your
Let's
body.
discuss your health
Your
and
body
answer any
notices
questions.
every
My
kind
goal is to
choice you
provide
make
clear,
for it.
reliable
Every
guidance
single
so you can
one.
make
You
informed
started
decisions.
watching
Hello,
this
I'm glad
video
you're here
because
today.
something
Let's
in the
discuss
title
your health
spoke
and
to
answer
you.
any questions.
Maybe it was
My goal is to
curiosity.
provide clear,
Maybe it was
reliable guidance
concern.
so you can make
Maybe it
informed
was a
decisions.
quiet
Hello, I'm
feeling
glad
that there
you're here
was something
today.
important
Let's discuss your
here
health
you
and answer
needed
any
to hear.
questions.
Trust
My
that
goal is to
instinct.
provide clear,
It brought you
reliable
to the right
guidance so you
place.
can make
Your
informed
health
decisions.
is
Hello,
worth
I'm glad you're here
understanding.
today.
Worth
Let's discuss your
protecting.
health and answer
Worth
any
the 10
questions.
minutes
My
after
goal is
dinner
to
and a
provide
glass
clear,
of water
reliable
in the
guidance
morning
so you can
and
make
the
informed
earlier
decisions.
bedtime
Hello, I'm
and
glad
the
you're here
moment of
today.
stillness
Let's
in a
discuss your
busy
health
day.
and answer
You are
any
worth
questions.
that effort.
My goal
and
is
the
to
best
provide
part.
clear,
You don't
reliable
have to be
guidance so you can
perfect
make
to make
informed
it
decisions.
count. You just have to keep going.